National Mission on Education through ICT have issued an open license policy guideline to promote OER. This is a recent development helped by SEMCA, and I would encourage you to look at it. Antigua and Barbuda, a small island state in the Caribbean, has recently developed a national OER policy through call support. So what are the implications for open universities? OER have the potential to open up access, improve quality, and reduce costs. As we know as open distance learning practitioners, that it can take up to 80% of an academic's time to develop course materials. But if we go in for OER, we can actually save that time. Some open universities, such as Athabasca, Wawasan Open University, and Asia E-University, are offering entire programs based on OER instead of developing new materials from scratch. The province of British Columbia, where the Commonwealth of Learning is located, has a Textbook Zero program, which is initiated by the government of British Columbia, which means that students don't pay for the OER-based textbooks. They're entirely free. What lessons, they've done a study recently, and it's just come out in June this year. What lessons can we draw from this project if we are to implement OER? One, that if you wish to implement OER, you would need systemic change within the institution. Two, senior level champions are essential to make this happen, which means the VC and PVCs have to be on board. Three, faculty would require some capacity building support. And four, the staff must take ownership. Even though OER was a term coined only in 2002, Professor Reddy had a similar vision well before that time. He believed that open universities in the country should form a network in which they would use the courses developed by each other rather than duplicate efforts. This sharing and collaboration is the basic philosophy underpinning OER. The second major development is MOOCs. As we know, a MOOC is a type of online course aimed at large-scale participation. MOOCs are a recent development in the area of distance education and a progression of the kind of open education ideals suggested by OER. The big three MOOCs platforms, edX, Coursera, and Udacity, all operate from the US. FutureLearn, launched last year, is designed and operated by the Open University UK. In Asia, notable MOOCs are being offered by China, India, and Pakistan. The NPTEL project in India is led by the government to provide job-related skills to young people in the science, technology, engineering, and maths STEM subjects. These are free, and students only pay about 2,000 rupees if they appear for an exam towards certification. Tsinghua University, which is one of the top research universities in China, is offering MOOCs in cultural studies in Mandarin, and these courses are free and meant for self-enrichment rather than certification. So you have two models, one for self-enrichment and the other that can lead to credits and certification. The MOOC effect is unexpected in some sense. I mean, look at the difference. 270,000 people signed up for the computer science course offered by Udacity, which is just one group, which is much larger than the total number of learners who aspire to do computer science courses in nearly 3,000 degree granting institutions in the US. So what is the profile of the typical MOOC registrant? A recent Harvard study shows that this was likely to be a male with a bachelor's degree and over the age of 26. 35% of those who enrolled in a MOOC never engaged with the content, and only 5% completed the courses. It's interesting to note that of the learners signing up for the MIT Harvard MOOCs, 72% were from outside the United States, and 2.7% were from the least developed countries, which are mostly in Africa. The University of Pennsylvania MOOC drew 15% from the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. While MOOCs may not yet have caught up in Africa, the viability for emerging economies is becoming clearer. MOOCs are giving universities a global profile, especially research universities, and more learners from developing countries are enrolling. An article in the journal Nature examined the subject matter of MOOC courses, which shows that about 28% belong to arts and humanities. Predominance of STEM and business topics is along the expected lines, and the presence of a significant number of arts and humanities courses is worth noting. This shows that there are no subject-related barriers to MOOC offerings. You can offer almost anything through a MOOC, which is basically a technology platform. So why do universities offer MOOCs? Recent research shows that extending their reach is one driver, while building the brand is another. It is significant that universities are investing in MOOCs to lead innovations in teaching and learning. This is an important and welcome development, as the focus is on good teaching and the learner, therefore, rather than only on research. What are the implications that these developments have for open universities? Let us look at the impact in 3 areas: pedagogy, services, and credentialing. In pedagogy, one of the things which the MOOCs are pushing, in fact, MOOCs are being praised for initiating the flipped classroom, which means students study at home and come for discussion to the classroom. Now, this is something which we as distance educators have known since many years, because that's exactly what we do. We give them self-instructional materials, which is a type of flipped classroom. They come to the tutorials for discussion and other clarifications. The other thing they are saying is that MOOCs are presenting materials in small chunks, which you know that we are presenting materials according to principles of instructional design, and therefore we are already doing what research universities are now claiming as an innovation. And the third thing they're saying is that it results in greater peer-to-peer interaction. We've always talked about tutor-learner interaction, but never so much about peer-to-peer. But if you look at the website of the IGNOU MCA students, you find a very vibrant student community which is interacting peer-to-peer already, and the level of discussion is of a very high quality. And I think if you haven't seen it, please go and see it, because I find that it's really, the students have really taken their learning in their own hands now. But there is an opportunity for us from the MOOC platform, and that is the use of learning analytics, which is a component of the MOOC platform, can help us to collect and analyze data about how learning is taking place. Because of this, predictive systems can be developed to identify potential dropouts and provide the necessary support to help them overcome their difficulties. Because it can also highlight those areas where many students struggle, so that the tutors get the feedback in time to take remedial measures. Another significant development contributing to teaching is the availability of huge masses of learner data that can be analyzed for continuous improvement and better outcomes. Now we come to the second, which is service provision. Service provision is an integral part of MOOC management. MOOC developments provide new ways to serve older concerns. One of them is to be able to assign a unique ID to each learner who can be identified across courses, something paper-based procedures are not good at as yet. MOOCs also offer tested and affordable techniques to manage learner and mentor records, which can be moved across platforms when necessary. MOOC platforms today provide for excellent online networking opportunities among the learners and between the learner and the tutor. In addition, good quality OER can enhance the learner content interaction by providing access to a library of supplementary, quality-assured materials. Open universities are well placed to engage with both OER and MOOCs. They have been strong in both contemporary pedagogy and services management. Their experience in content design and development can easily lead to effective adoption and adaptation of OER. Student support services can also be strengthened by adapting MOOC technologies. Now we come to the third, which is credentialing. This was not a consideration when MOOCs were first launched. However, it is a serious consideration now, and a number of approaches are being deployed. The practice of badges, which allows a learner to accumulate credit, is gaining currency. Invigilated exams and certificates derived from them are also becoming more current because widespread recognition of badges does not yet exist. This is clearly an important area where rapid changes are taking place, and open universities will need to find flexible and open ways in which these changes can be accommodated. Universities can unbundle their services and offer smaller, more need-based options. We can see a delinking of the institutions which teach and the institutions which credential. It will be possible for learners to construct their own courses based entirely on OER and carry their credits from one institution to another. Long before we witnessed the MOOC phenomenon, Professor Reddy had the vision of a student who joined one open university as free to take courses and credits from other open universities. So how have open universities responded to OER and MOOCs? The FutureLearn is a private company of the Open University UK. It's a consortium of 38 institutions in England and in Europe, provides a model of what other open universities could initiate. FutureLearn already offers 29 free courses which have attracted over 750,000 students, and all these are still meant for self-enrichment or continuous professional development. The Open University of Netherlands offers a MOOC in e-learning. This again is free, not for certification. They give a certificate of participation. Beijing Open University offers 7 courses in skills development. Again, not for credits or certification. The Virtual University of Pakistan is making the MIT OpenCourseware available through their web portal for their students, and that then becomes part of their current and the credentials and qualifications which they offer. The University of Philippines Open University is offering MOOCs to provide training in skills related to call center services and basic nursing. Call center is a very attractive profession for young people in the Philippines, and of every 10 people who apply, only 1 gets taken in because they don't have the relevant skills. So the UPOU is offering this skills program for young people so that they get all the kind of training they need before they go for their interviews. NPTEL is the only project which among all these is offering the option of proctored exams. And you can see that they didn't expect 52,000 people to join this program which they're offering with the IT industry. And the testing costs, as I said, 2,000 rupees, and the participants are more than 10,000 who have actually completed the course. So you can imagine the revenue that was generated through this course. CALL, in partnership with the IIT Kanpur, offered a MOOC on mobiles for development. This interdisciplinary open course attracted over 2,200 registrants from 116 countries, 62% of whom were active participants. And here we used, all the principles of good distance education. We provided good tutorial support. And we also gave a blended approach that, for example, students from Sierra Leone said that we don't have the bandwidth to access the materials online, so can you send us CD-ROMs? So we sent them the materials on CD-ROM, and they used their limited connectivity only for tutorial interactions. And this 6-week course was completed by over 400 participants. So what did we learn? That it's important to provide high-quality materials. We can do this through OER, combined with good teaching and tutorial support. Keeping the learners engaged is essential through frequent communication. And the IT platform must be reliable and robust, which means it mustn't crash. And this can be achieved without the branded platforms that, of course, the big MOOCs are offering. And we can use open source platforms instead, and quality can be delivered at lower costs. So all these are very exciting possibilities, but do they help us reach and give vision and shape to what Professor Ram Reddy had told us at the very beginning of really reaching the very unreached people in our country? We have seen an unprecedented growth in technology in the last 10 years, yet there is a digital divide between the different regions of the Commonwealth. Compare the internet access of over 80% in Europe and North America with the less than 10% in Asia, which is the second bars you see over there. And if you look at the Indian situation, access to fixed broadband is minimal if you look at the last line in this graph. And if you look at the second line, there are only 13% internet users, while mobile subscriptions account for well over 70%. Mobile devices are proving to be a game changer, and the unanticipated and rapid rise of cell telephony and affordable tablets are making a contribution towards turning the digital divide into a dividend, and this is perhaps where we should look at in providing technology solutions for the really unreached. But clearly, as we've seen, OER and MOOCs cannot in themselves help us to address inequality in education. As Justin Reich, in this study, he's from Harvard, argues that OER by themselves will not address equity issues. Institutions and groups with better access to resources and infrastructure will make more use of the educational technology innovations such as free and open resources rather than marginalized groups. For example, as he tells us, teachers in low-resource contexts cannot participate in these movements to the extent that their more privileged counterparts can. Similarly, are we really reaching the unreached with MOOCs? According to Srinivasan of Columbia University, at the moment, MOOC weren't reaching the unreached in Africa, but those on Wall Street through a course on financial engineering and risk management. And of course, lots of PhDs enrolling in MOOCs. Another researcher concludes that so far MOOCs have only reached those with degrees. How can we reach the millions who aspire to enter higher education and earn degrees in our own country? For OER and MOOCs to contribute to social inclusion, we need to focus on appropriate technologies as well as social and economic issues. We in the open universities have the opportunity to create new models of OER use and MOOCs. Some elements of these would include a participatory approach in which stakeholders have a voice and a say, decentralized and flexible organizational structures, which will help us to respond to such developments in a timely manner. We can further sharpen our focus on learner centricity, and I was very pleased to hear our Vice Chancellor putting his focus on learners. The unreached will not be reached as a matter of chance. We must have mechanisms in place to target specific marginalized communities. So what strategies do we need to adopt? One, by placing an emphasis on the people rather than the technology alone. Two, by viewing knowledge as a social product in which people have a voice and can contribute. It's not something which is coming top down from universities alone. And three, by seeing learning as a process which leads to development. The unprecedented growth in technologies, the changing needs of the labor market, and the increasing demand for relevant education and skills from our young people all place a special responsibility on our universities. As Professor Reddy cautioned us, and I quote, Indian higher education is going to be tested for its resilience and vitality. The institutions of higher education and the academic community will have to live up to this challenge. Else, they will be rendered vestiges, mutilely and helplessly witnessing changes around which they are not able to comprehend or catch up with. IGNOU has made very impressive strides since I last left here in 2002 and has covered many marginalized constituencies. OER and MOOCs present us with new challenges and opportunities. Let us harness the potential of these and use them as appropriate tools of Indian higher education to address the issues of equity and inclusion that Professor Reddy spoke of. That will be the best way to honor his memory. And with that, let me thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your experiences and expertise with us, and for tying up Professor G. Ram Reddy's vision with the OER and MOOC movement to reach the unreached. Thank you once again. May I request Professor Aslam to kindly offer, to present Professor Asha Kanwar with a memento and a shawl as a token of our gratitude.